Bama gets the win yesterday, and it was a day that you could have had the loss. But are they losing confidence?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me, and Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by Game Time, and thank you, everydayers, for joining us every day. And thank you, newbies, for joining in now. We appreciate you so much. We do. We love you. We don't care if you think we're wrong all the time. And if you hate listen, we just love you being around here. We just don't want to talk into the ether. I will say this yesterday, as the game was going on, the Alabama game was going on, I was tweeting an inordinate amount for me. And a friend of mine texted me, he's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just downstairs in my basement alone with 3 TVs going, and I'm watching the Bama game, and I'm mad, and I don't have anybody to talk to." So, and I said, I'm glad I don't have anybody to talk to, because I don't want somebody to tell me, "Oh, this isn't that big a deal," because I can clearly see that it is a big deal. But Jimmy, Alabama did get the win. You and I said yesterday on the post-game pod, we're going to remain more positive. We are. We're going to look. Let's start off with a few positives. Number one, they won. Number two, Alabama's 5-1. Yes, they should be 6-0. And if they were 6-0, you would be sitting incredibly pretty for a playoff spot. There's no doubt. But it is what it is. So 5-1. Okay, we'll take it. And a lot of teams are in worse spots than you. A lot of teams that people thought were 100% better than you. Think about somebody like Ole Miss. They're practically out of the playoffs. I mean, practically. In fact, I would say they're out of the playoffs. I mean, it's going to take a miracle. Who else had a bad day yesterday? Certainly Oklahoma had a bad day yesterday. They can't do anything right now. Tennessee, I mean, they same boat as Alabama. That's who we got coming up. We'll be talking about them all week. Just a wild day in college football again. And luckily, Alabama was able to come out on the positive end.
Yeah, if you watched college football all day yesterday, you would feel more fortunate that Alabama was able to come out with a win, because there were some very exciting games and some crazy results. And like Luke said, Ole Miss picked ahead of Alabama by, I don't know if most, certainly many, before the season started. They have their second loss and haven't even got to the Georgia game yet. So I agree with Luke that Ole Miss is likely out already. Alabama's still in it, but I don't think, just like I said last week after Vanderbilt, I don't think playoff talk as far as Alabama goes is very helpful or conducive to anything. What Alabama needs to do is improve. I'm not sure that they did. It was a win, so that's an improvement. But Alabama still clearly has significant issues, especially on defense. And that's what's got to change. That's what's got to pick up. I'm hoping, a couple things I'm hoping here, Luke. I'm hoping that Alabama proves to be one of these teams that kind of plays to the level of their opponent. You know, when you play Vandy, you're Vandy. When you play South Carolina, you're South Carolina. When you play Georgia, you're Georgia. Maybe Alabama is one of those teams. That does happen. I also think teams take on the personality of their head coach. And we saw the results of that for 17 years under Nick Saban, where Alabama's team was a very business-like domination machine, didn't show a ton of emotion, just was very, that's where joyless murder ball came from. I mean, they just went about their business every week. Now, DeBoer has a radically different personality than Saban, so it only makes sense to me that the team would have a radically different personality than it did under Saban. And I think we're seeing what I would call a personality transition from the Saban years to the DeBoer years. And some of that ride is bumpy. But, I think there's way too much negativity out there in terms of emphatic statements that Alabama's, the domination's over, playoff out, they're terrible, that sort of stuff. There's too much negativity as far as that's concerned, though I'm not ignoring the obvious real issues the team has to address and improve. That's the thing about college football, Luke. These teams can improve. We saw Alabama's team improve last year. This team can improve. There are pieces in place for this to be a good football team, and they play well at times. They just need to change at times to 60 minutes.
Well, and I think it may even be too much to ask for 60 minutes. In fact, let's be honest here that Nick Saban's team didn't always play its best for 60 minutes. I mean, I think you were asking for maybe to be a little more fundamentally sound. There are some very key fundamental things that I think can be fixed. And again, you can say, well, I thought you were going to be positive. I'm being positive in that I say I think that a lot of Alabama's issues can be fixed. What we need to see is that they get fixed. and that's where I'm having my doubt. I talked to another Alabama fan last night watching some other games, went over to his house, and he said, why can't we just be like that first drive we had? And instead of going off on some big long rant about, hey, look, sports doesn't work that way. I thought, okay, we don't have to be off on do just like that first drive all the time and score with relative ease every time. But what we have to do is the next time we have a drive and Ryan Williams has his man beat by 3 feet, we have to be able to connect on that pass, especially with a quarterback that's known for hitting the deep ball. We have to get the ball into the hands of our playmakers more often. And it hadn't been a problem to get the ball in the hands of Ryan Williams until yesterday. And I don't care what anybody says. Some people have said, hey, well, they really bracketed Williams well. I saw him several times where it looked like he was open. Now, maybe some coach out there in the film study can say, Luke, this is why you're an idiot. He really wasn't open. But I can tell you this, when we tried to hit Jeremy Bernard for that touchdown pass that was intercepted, the other side of the field, Ryan Williams was open 100%. We got to change some things. I'm trying to stay positive, so I don't know how to spin this in a positive manner. I don't really know what's going on with our running game. Don't really know what's going on with Justice Haynes. I felt like he was going to be much more of a thing. If you watch this podcast, you know that. You know I was in love with Justice Haynes. It just hadn't happened. Now, here's another thing. Boy, Jam Miller takes more non-having the ball hits than any. He took a hit yesterday on an RPO that I thought it would have killed him. He didn't get the ball, luckily, and Jalen Milroe kept it and went for several yards, if I remember right. But holy smokes, did he get blown up? And of course, he got blown up, or at least took a good size hit in a block attempt against Georgia when Milroe ran for his big run around the corner. Now, some people say, well, that other guy got the worst of it because his helmet came off. True, but both of them probably were feeling it.
There are some issues on offense. Offense isn't playing as well as it can be, and I thought they probably had their worst game. Yeah, I thought of the 6 games, that might have been the offense's worst performance of the 6. But I still feel pretty good about the offense. It comes down to this for me, Luke. You're playing a decent SEC team in South Carolina. They're pretty good. They're going to end up a 6-6, 7-5 type football team. They're pretty good in a strong SEC. Well, if there's a minute 50 left in the game and the offense has the ball and they've got to drive the length of the field to score and win the game, I'm going to feel like they're going to do it. I'm going to feel positive. I'm going to feel like, yes, between Jalen and Ryan and Jeremy and the backs and the tight ends, they're going to find a way. The offense will find a way to win the game. Conversely, if Alabama's got a 4-point lead with 1:45 seconds left and South Carolina's got to drive the length of the field to score, I have no confidence the defense will get a stop right now. I have got none. They will not get the stop. That's what's got to change. And it's a big, big change to go from, boy, I don't have any confidence in this unit to building confidence. But you know how it starts? It starts one series at a time. It starts one play at a time. You're going to play a pretty good offense in Knoxville this week. They've got a talented quarterback. They run the ball with Dylan Sampson as well as anybody in this league. They've got a good offensive line. They got playmakers at receiver. They're better on offense than South Carolina. They're better on offense than Vanderbilt, in my opinion. This is where you can start turning around. One series, one possession, one quarter at a time, one half at a time, one game at a time. there's pieces in place for Alabama's defense to be pretty good. I don't think they'll be truly top 5 elite, but I do think there are places that they're pretty good. They just have to put it all together and play more consistently.
Let me tell you all about LinkedIn in case you've been scouring the interwebs looking for a new defensive coordinator. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional right there on LinkedIn, and you can post your job free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions, yep, yeah, they'll apply. Another positive that's going to transition into maybe a question. I saw number 18 out there a little bit on wide receivers, but he didn't get a ball, and as far as I know, he didn't get a target. I just pulled up the stats. Here is something that is concerning to me, Jimmy. 3 receivers caught a ball yesterday. Jeremy Bernard had 4, Cole Adams had 2, Ryan Williams had 4. The rest was Justice, Jam, Cuevas, and Dupree. And you say, well, Luke, why is that a problem? We need to have more wide receivers involved in this. We've got some other good wide receivers, and we need to get them involved. I don't know what everybody's availability was yesterday. I haven't taken a deep dive into that or anything, but that is concerning to me.
Yeah, Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law didn't play a snap yesterday. They're still recovering from injuries. It was thought they were likely going to be cleared to play, but they did not. So they obviously just haven't recovered from their injuries in previous games. So without Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice, Caleb Odom played a lot of snaps. Cole Adams played a bigger role than he ever has before, and I thought played really well. I'm with Luke that Alabama's offense is going to be more dangerous the more people they can get involved. Definitely true, but Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law are more proven players, and Alabama needs them back, especially for this week. It's a all-hands-on-deck situation at Tennessee, and the more you spread the ball around, I think the more dangerous you are. I do think offensively fixing the run game. I used to think we were just underusing the run game. Maybe part of it's from underuse, but the run game's just not good right now. It's not good enough. With Justice and Jam, it's not good enough, and we're overusing Jalen Milroe, who I thought looked a little beat up at the end of the game against South Carolina, and that's not good. Those are hits that should be absorbed by Justice and Jam and not the quarterback. So we need to run Jalen less, run Justice and Jam more, but as long as it's efficient. It wasn't efficient enough yesterday. They're not averaging enough yards per carry. So the offense does have to get better. Again, I thought they had their worst game of the 6, but overall, I think the offense is fine. If Alabama is underachieving as a football team in terms of how they're playing, it's the defense. That's the group that's underachieving. That's the group that's not getting enough pressure on the quarterback. They're not tackling well enough, and there's busts in the secondary. All of that. And it just needs to be better.
I'm going to tell you something. You and I have said this, and again, we don't have any problem saying we were wrong. We've said this up until this point, that we thought we improved at the running back room. I don't know that we have. Now, the sample size is large enough now to say we missed the mark. Roydale Williams, I don't know what he had at this point last year. I bet he had more than 360 yards, which is what Jam Miller has, which is leading the team.
Yeah, that's and what's crazy, that's totally true. And by the way, all we heard last year from fans were we're playing the wrong backs. Justice and Jam need to be playing, not Roydale and Jace. Roydale and Jace were more productive. I mean, that's a fact. And Jace is in the NFL, and Jam and Justice have to be more productive. Sometimes that's not always the back. Sometimes it's a scheme. Sometimes it's the block. And the offensive line did have probably their roughest day of the year yesterday, which I think led to most of the problems on offense. Part of it, maybe they didn't play well. A lot lot of it credit to South Carolina because they do have a legit defensive line that's tough for anyone to block. So South Carolina was going to have their wins up front, and they did. They might have just had more wins than we were hoping. Again, they have dudes that are going to be playing in the NFL a long time.
Kennard will be. That guy freaky good.
Yeah, Dylan Stewart's probably long-term even better than Kennard. Kennard's just an older kid that's just kind of ready for the pro football now. Dylan Stewart's got a ways to go, but Dylan Stewart has every bit of the talent that Kennard has. And again, inside, I don't think we talk enough about, Tonka and the other guys they have inside. This is how good they are, Luke. We had a transfer there, Monkel Goodwine, left Alabama and went to South Carolina. He barely gets to play there. He wasn't playing here. And people are, how come Goodwine doesn't play? He went to South Carolina, and you're thinking, oh, well, he'll play there. No, they're deep and good on the defensive line to where Goodwine doesn't get many snaps.
Yeah, and to reiterate the point about Justice, for instance, and I'm not killing the kid. I want him to be successful. I was hyping him up before it was cool. But again, the production is screaming to me. It's not getting done. Now, part of it is certainly maybe offensive line, maybe not getting enough opportunities. Somebody pointed out on Twitter yesterday, maybe he's a Derrick Henry type that needs to be fed more and more and more and more and more. Maybe, but this offense isn't built for that. So that's not going to be conducive to getting what he wants if that's the case. But he has, I just pulled it up on ESPN. He through 6 games, he has 39 carries for 249 yards. And you say, okay, he's averaging 6.4 yards a carry. Take out his 85-yard run. Now, the 85-yard run is a part of what he does, but so that a lot of times you can't do that because a certain running back will act like Barry Sanders. He'll go 1 yard, 1 yard, 1 yard, 1 yard, 90 yards, 1 yard, 1 yard, but he always goes 90 yards in one game. He always does the 90-yarder. Justice Haynes has gone 85 yards one time. And if you take that, you back that out of 240, I mean, it is not pretty. And it's got to be better. So yeah, that's an issue. And I don't know. When you have Ryan Williams, I want to get him the ball as much as I can. And when you have Jalen Milroe, I want him to be able to use his legs or arm as much as I can. So I don't know how to get the running game going necessarily because we're sort of a big play team typically. So I don't really know what the answer is here, Jimmy.
Well, I think using the running game more often is a thing. I mean, they have to get in some level of a rhythm. I mean, I agree with you. It's not going to be a Derrick Henry situation where all of a sudden Justice Haynes or Jam Miller gets 20-plus carries in a game. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think they need to reduce the amount of times that Milroe's carrying the ball as a back and increase the load for Justice and Jam. I mean, I think that's priority number one. Overall, again, the offense is pretty good and productive in terms of points scored, yards. When your worst game is, they scored 4 touchdowns, against South Carolina, and they not only scored the 4 touchdowns, they turned it over in the end zone. So it could have easily been 35, if not for that Milroe interception. The offense, again, it needs to be better. The offense needs tweaks. I'm concerned that the defense needs more of an overhaul.
Yeah, I want to talk about the rest of college football too and how it relates to Alabama, but I just noticed this trend. Here's our, I talked about this week. I thought Alabama would break the 40-point barrier again, and obviously they didn't. Here's a trend that is worrisome to me. Here's Alabama's points per each game. 63 against Western Kentucky, 42 South Florida, 42 Wisconsin, 41 Georgia, 40 Vanderbilt, 35 Vanderbilt, 27 South Kakalaki. We have gone down every single game with the exception of the 42-42 South Florida, Wisconsin. That's concerning to me.
Yeah, and some of it's who you're playing. Some of it is obviously you score all those points against Western Kentucky, and some of it's who you're playing. But I agree that the offense has sort of trended down recently. But I also feel like they can get it back. Again, we said it earlier in the show, and I think it sums it up well. I think if Alabama needs to drive the field and score to win the game, I have confidence that they would. I think they really could, with Milroe, drive the length of the field and win the game. I just have literally zero confidence right now in the defense getting a stop in the same situation.
All right, if you're interested in going to Knoxville next week, you want to get on Game Time and use code Locked On College for $20 off that first purchase, because Game Time is the place to go to get your tickets. I love it. I've used it all over the place. Used it for Major League Baseball, World Series, the NFL. I've used it for college football, college baseball, concerts, college basketball, all NBA, everything. And I really have. I'm not kidding with y'all. It's on my phone. I have very few things that are on my phone. It's Game Time calling me right now saying thanks. You really do talk about us in a lovely fashion. But yeah, Game Time's awesome. Go check them out. You will love it. The best deals, the best customer service, the best everything. You can see where you're going to be sitting. See the view from your seat. That's a big deal, where you get to see, okay, this ticket's only $10. Why is that? Oh, it's because I'm behind 6 columns. No, in Game Time, you'll be like, oh, I'm not sitting behind those 6 columns. I'm going to pay just a hair more and sit on the side of those columns. That's just because Game Time's going to hook you up. Go check out Game Time. You'll love it. Use code Locked On College for $20 off that first order. College football is getting pretty wild and woolly right now. I have no problem saying I still probably would have preferred the 4-team playoff, but at the same time, it was fun yesterday. I don't know if it was more fun yesterday because we have a 12-team playoff. I don't know. That's hard to say. But I think that yesterday was just top to bottom a weekend we all looked forward to, and now it lived up to the hype. It's just hard to say that weekend could have been any better. This weekend could have been any better. It was just a ton of fun. Looking at what we think the top 25 will be, I think everybody's going to have Texas at 1. You could put Oregon there, and that's fine. And here's something I thought about last night with Oregon. Oregon had a Kalen DeBoer problem. They couldn't beat Washington. Dan Lanning couldn't. And he got over the hump. I think we saw him get over the hump last night. I think we saw Dan Lanning maybe take a move. You got to have that game that defeats the trend or bucks the stereotype, right?
Yeah, it was a huge win for them. I'm still not, put it this way, I'm impressed with the win, of course. They beat Ohio State, and it was an exciting game, and they got dudes, and Oregon's got a lot of Alabama influence, so I sort of root for them.
But don't say that, because Trayshawn Holden spit on a guy last night.
Well, there's some of that Alabama influence. But I would bet against Oregon winning the national championship. I don't see it.
I'm with you.
I don't think they'll win the whole thing. I think they'll obviously make the playoff and be a threat to win games and probably even have a pretty good seed based on how the season's going. But I'll be a little surprised if they win the national championship. I'm not sure who is, other than Texas, who I picked, before the season started. And Texas looks, I don't know, unbeatable is not the right term, but to me, Texas has clearly been the best team. Now that may change this week because they match up against Georgia, so we'll see a real barometer there. But to me, Texas has clearly been the best team. But I enjoyed the heck out of yesterday. Couldn't believe Florida played Tennessee. Tennessee's got a little bit of an Alabama thing going on, where they look like one team early in the season and look like a completely different team right now, much like Alabama.
Nico looks shook.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
He hasn't been as good the last couple of weeks. I think probably youth and lack of experience. A kid that's probably going to be better year to year. But Nico hasn't been – the Tennessee offense has just been struggling, and defensively they're not quite what they were. And the fact that Florida played them to overtime was shocking to me. And how about Vanderbilt proving, like we said all along, even before Alabama played Vanderbilt, that this is not the Vanderbilt that everyone is. Vandy's kind of a given. You can pencil them in at 0-8 in the SEC. You can pencil them in as just a team that would probably lose to a lot of group of 5 teams. No, Vandy is a legitimate SEC team this year. Most of it has to do with Diego Pavia. An impressive road win for Vanderbilt. And heck, they took Missouri to overtime too. Let's not forget how close they were to knock.
And they had Georgia State beat. Georgia State scored in the last second.
Yeah, and they did. And that Georgia State,
whoever it was,
is an albatross around. They could have so easily won that game, and they'd be sitting here 6-0. Had they beaten Georgia State and found the one play that they needed to beat Missouri. But shout out to Vanderbilt and just real impressed with what Clark Lee's doing. But all the games, Ohio State, Oregon was great. Ole Miss, LSU was great. Great games all day long. Unfortunately, Alabama was a great game for people that had no rooting interest in the game, other than people that don't have a rooting interest. I think won Alabama lose.
I would take exception with great. I would say that Alabama was dramatic, but like when I watched Ohio State, Oregon, as a not having a dog in the fight guy, I saw two dog teams. I saw some teams with dudes making plays. With Alabama and South Carolina, I saw two teams with a cavalcade of errors and some guys that had potential, like Kyle Kennard has potential. Obviously, Jalen Milroe has all this potential, and they would show flashes, but it wasn't like this constant, I'm going to kick your butt thing. And I think Ohio State and Oregon, they had people making plays. Now, Ohio State at the end made some, but didn't make quite as many plays. But that Jeremiah Smith guy, he's ridiculous.
He plays like a mature, you know how like people say, like Ryan, 17, how can a 17-year-old do that? If you told me that Jonathan was 24, I would tell you he's a great player. You know what I mean? The Ohio State wide receiver, Jeremiah.
Okay, what are you talking about?
Jeremiah. He's so, his game and his body, he's so mature in how everything he does. You could sell me right now on that's an NFL football player. Did you see where he said, hey, me and Ryan Williams are the best two wide receivers in football right now? That was interesting.
Well, look, we're going to keep talking about Bama. I know everybody keep your head up. I've seen certainly there's a lot of negativity, and I understand it. I understand why people are worried. I get it. I'm worried too. I also don't agree with the sunshine pumpers that, hey, a win's a win and roll tide and let's move on. Okay, if that's the way you want to live, go for it. But when you dive into it a little deeper, you're going to be a little concerned about what's happening right now in Tuscaloosa. And we need to get the ship righted. And hopefully we can get it righted this week. It's going to be a difficult task. I mean, Tennessee is not a team we probably need to be playing right now. Their defense gets after you pretty good. Their interior defensive line last night looked strong. Now, it was against Florida, and Florida's got a lot of problems of their own. But their defensive interior line looks strong. And if Nico is on his game, that's going to be a problem for us. That's going to be a real problem.
They're going to be fired up. They're going to be fired up for Alabama. I'm not sure that Florida game that they were into it.
No. For Alabama. They were fired up, Jimmy. Let me tell you something. I'll give the Tennessee crowd credit. You could feel the reverberation through the television. Now, that was a night game, and I heard some people on Twitter say, why was Alabama not into it? Now you were there, I wasn't, but on television, it seemed like the crowd was into it enough for Alabama for an 11 o'clock kick after a Vanderbilt loss. I can live with that.
When they needed the crowd was there. It was not a beginning to end delirium atmosphere by any means at all. But when Alabama's defense needed the crowd to be loud to help them, it was. I think the crowd answered the call, but it wasn't the atmosphere that the Georgia game was. Of course not.
But it's not good.
And it was never going to be an 11 a.m. kick against South Carolina. But it was fine. It was okay. And there were empty seats. But I figured there would be for 11 a.m. Kick. But, one thing I'll say is another thing I'm going to try to repeat in every show this week, Luke. For anybody that's too negative about Tennessee, Alabama is the same team that beat Georgia. We're the same team that did that. It's not crazy to think that Alabama can compete with Tennessee. They beat Georgia, who's a better team than Tennessee. Maybe not by a lot, but they are better. So I don't know if I want to use the word optimistic about Saturday, but I don't rule out Alabama playing well. And
here's another thing to look at. Alabama at quarterback has a similar yet better situation at quarterback than Arkansas does. Mobile quarterback, big dude, fast.
Milroe's better than Green. Milroe's better than Taylor Green. Milroe's better than Taylor Green.
Well, what I'm saying is they're the same. It's not like saying Tom Brady is better than Randall Cunningham. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, he is, but they're totally different.
they're similar-ish. I totally agree. Jalen's just a better passer now. Taylor Green had a nice performance throwing the ball against Tennessee, which was a little surprising. But no, Milroe is a step up at quarterback in terms of Taylor Green, and they played mostly against DJ Lagway yesterday for Florida, and Lagway's a talented freshman, but Lagway's no Milroe, not yet. So
no, and they let him make the tying touchdown throw at the end when it was like 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 20. Yeah. They let him do. Now they didn't let him do it. I mean, he did it, but they allowed it to happen. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic. We ended the podcast on a happy note. So let's do it. Let's end it before I keep talking. That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.